Now we will discuss about some mechanical properties of matter. So we know that matter mainly consists of three types: solid, liquid and gas. There are other types also, but these are the main three important types. So first we will discuss mainly about solids, and then we will discuss a few things about the fluids also. Now again we have discussed a few things about fluids in the other chapters as well. So those particular topics are also important. So let's start with the mechanical properties of matters, specifically about solids. So before we start that, we need to understand a few basic things about matter. So we know that matter is composed of atoms and molecules. Matter is composed of atoms and molecules. And what is matter? Matter is something which has some mass and which occupies some space, which has some volume as well. So matter is made up of molecules and atoms. So let's mainly focus on the atoms. So we know that atoms combine to form molecules. So initially we will try to understand why does or how does the atoms combine and form the molecules. So in order to understand those things, let's start with the concept of interatomic and intermolecular forces. Interatomic and intermolecular forces. So what is interatomic force? The force between two or more atoms. And what is intermolecular force? The force between two or more molecules. So let's say that we have two atoms. Let's say we have two atoms. Let's say one atom is this, one atom is this. This is atom 1, this is atom 2. Now these two atoms can have multiple different positions with respect to each other. They can be very far, they can be very close together, or they can be at a moderate distance from each other. So we will try to draw the graph of potential energy, change in the potential energy with the distance between the atoms. So let's say this is the y-axis is the potential energy and x-axis is representing the distance between the two atoms. So it is observed that as the distance between the two atoms is decreased, the potential energy also decreases, and at a certain point the potential energy becomes minimum. Let's say that distance is r naught. Then after that the potential energy starts to increase, and from a negative value it becomes a bit positive, like this. So what is happening is, there is this one location, let's say this location, at which the potential energy reach its minimum value, and at this position, at this location, the two atoms are neither attracting each other a lot and neither repelling each other a lot. So first of all, let's say they are very farther apart, or let's say they are far, or let's say far means, let's say the distance between them is more than r naught. Then they are at a moderate distance, let's say the distance between them is equal to r naught. And then third situation, they are close to each other, that is distance is less than r naught. So when the distance is greater than r naught, then the potential energy is almost approximately equal to 0, and it is negative. So when the particles, the atoms are more than r, have the distance more than r naught, that is they are a bit far away, then in that case the force between them is attractive in nature, that is they try to attract each other. When the distance is equal to r naught, then at that location the force is approximately equal to 0. There is not much attraction, neither there is much repulsion. And when the when the distance is less than r0, then the force between the two atoms, it becomes repulsive in nature. That is, if you push the two atoms very close to each other, they will try to repel each other. So it is like a spring. The force is like a spring. If you push the springs too far, they will try to attract the 2 points towards each other. If you push that spring towards or you compress the spring will try to expand. So for example, the force is like the spring force. So between the atoms the force acts like this. The potential energy changes like this graph. It becomes minimum at r0, at which position the force is approximately equal between the two atoms. So just keep these things in mind. And this force of attraction and repulsion tells us about how the bonds are formed, how the atoms are combined together. So what are the different types of bonds? So what is bond? Bond means bonds are something which keep the atoms together. So there are many types of bonds, but mainly there are two types of bonds: ionic and covalent bond. There are some other types of bonds as well, like van der Waals bond, polar covalent bond, hydrogen bond, but they are not that important for now. So the bonds are mainly of two types: ionic bonds and covalent bonds, and these bonds held the atoms together, and they make the molecules. They combine the atoms and make the molecules. So let's discuss about ionic and covalent bond in short. So first of all, what is ionic bonding, and then what is covalent bonding? So ionic bonding is the bonding in which the electrons are exchanged. Electrons are exchanged. And in covalent bonding, the electrons are shared. So what does this mean? So let's take an example and it will be clear. So for example, NaCl. How does NaCl is obtained? So Na is sodium. Its atomic configuration, electronic configuration is like this. Chlorine is another element whose electronic configuration is like this. So what happens is sodium requires 7 more electrons to complete the octet, but it can do one more thing. It can donate its one electron, and this third shell will be the third shell will become empty, and the outermost shell will become the second one. So in second one there is already 8 electrons, so it will become stable. And chlorine require only 1 electron, so it will take the 1 electron. So what happens is sodium is the donor, chlorine is the acceptor. So sodium will donate 1 electron to chlorine. So ultimately what will happen? Sodium will become positive because it has 1 electron less. Proton are 11 but electrons are 10. And chlorine will become negative because it has 17 proton but the electrons will become 18. So ultimately they are opposite in nature, opposite polarity, so they will attract each other and form NaCl. So NaCl is formed by the exchange of electrons between the sodium and chlorine atoms. Now similarly, let's take one example to understand covalent bonding. So let's say CH4. So carbon is 2,4 and configuration for hydrogen is only 1. So what happens is carbon require 4 electrons to complete the octet. So let's say let's try to draw the outermost shell only. So outermost shell of carbon has 4 electrons. So carbon can do one thing. It can bond with 4 different hydrogens. Each hydrogen will give it 1 electron. And what does hydrogen need? Hydrogen need 1 electron because it needs to complete the duplet. Okay, in the first orbit only 2 electrons can be there. So the hydrogen atom only require one electron. So in this way, carbon will achieve 4 electrons from 4 different hydrogens, and all the hydrogens individually have 2 electrons. So what is happening here is that these electrons are not exchanged. Hydrogen is not giving its electron to carbon, or carbon is not giving its electron to hydrogen. Rather, these electrons are shared among them. So this electron is shared between them. This electron is shared between them. These electrons are shared between them. These electrons are shared between them. So here the electrons are shared. So this type of bonding is called covalent bonding. So here carbon and 4 hydrogen atoms combine to form CH4. So this is the covalent bonding. So ionic bonding and covalent bonding has a few different mechanisms working for them. So ultimately, now we can go to the types of matter: solids and fluids. Fluids, we have discussed that fluids can be anything which can flow. Usually they are liquids and gases. And the solids can be further divided into two parts: crystalline solids and amorphous solids. So what are crystalline and what are amorphous solids? So crystalline solids are the solids which have a regular structure. Okay, they have some regular structure. The atoms or molecules in the crystalline solids are arranged in a proper or a regular manner, but in an amorphous solid the arrangement of the atoms or molecules is not regular. Few of the atoms are arranged in one manner, few of the atoms or molecules are arranged in another manner, so the arrangement is not regular in amorphous solid. So because of that, crystalline solid is having same having a regular structure. Its melting point is sharp. Okay, for example, water and ice. So what at 1 atmospheric pressure, the ice gets converted into water at the temperature of 0 degree Celsius. So at 0 degree Celsius the ice gets converted into water. It is a sharp point only at 0 when 1 atmospheric pressure is there. But for the amorphous solids, for example, glass is the amorphous solid. So for amorphous solids, the melting point is irregular. It is in a particular range. So for example, the different types of glass melt at different temperatures. And for example, let's say there we have one glass, and its melting point can be in between 550 degrees Celsius to 650 degrees Celsius. So there is a range of temperatures during which the glass melts. So amorphous solids have irregular melting points, not a sharp melting point. Crystalline solids are anisotropic and amorphous solids are isotropic. What does this mean? Isotropic means it looks same from everywhere. So for example, if you have a sphere, if you have a ball, so if you look it from anywhere, it will look the same to you. Okay, so similarly amorphous solids have a structure which is fairly irregular. Randomness is there. So wherever you look it from, you will see randomness. So they are isotropic, similar from every angle. But crystalline solids are anisotropic. For example, let's say if, we know that they have regular arrangement. For example, the atoms are arranged like this, let's say. So if you look at this atom from this angle, it will look a bit different. From here it will look a bit different. From here it will look a bit different. From here it will look a bit different. So it looks different from different angles. So because of that, the crystalline solids are anisotropic in nature. So as discussed, when the interatomic forces when the distances are far away, the interatomic force is attractive in nature. When the distance is less, then the forces are repulsive. Now solids show different types of properties. Like solids show elastic, some different solids show different properties. Some show elasticity, some show plasticity, some show brittleness, some show elastomer property. So what are these properties, and which solids or why different solids show different properties? We will discuss that. from now on. So in order to properly understand these properties, we need to understand two terms. One term is stress and another term that we need to understand is strain. So what are stress and strain, and then after that we will understand these four types of solids, different properties that the solids show. So stress is stress, the formula of stress is force upon area. Now what is the meaning of this? So what is stress? So let's say we have one solid, one object. Now for example, this cylinder is there, and let's say we are trying to apply some external force on this solid. So let's say the external force is applied in the downward direction, that is we are trying to pull the cylinder down. So what happens is that solids are not usually it is not easy to change the shapes of the solid that easily. Okay, so what will happen is that there will be some restoring force which will be acting in the opposite direction from the applied external force. Okay, so that restoring force gives us the concept of stress. So the restoring force per unit area is called the stress. Normal force upon area is the external force upon area is the pressure. Okay, normal pressure that we have studied so far, but stress is the restoring force upon area. So when when we try to change the shape of the solid, then there is this external force that is to be applied, and the solid applies some restoring force in opposition to the external force in order to keep its shape the same. So that restoring force per unit area is called the stress. So stress, obviously when you apply more external force, the stress will increase because the solid will need to apply more restoring force. So the term stress is quite familiar to you. So now stress is of four types: tensile stress, compressional stress, tangential and hydrostatic stress. So these three are important for us. Hydrostatic or hydro stress is not important because it is for fluids. We are mainly focusing on the solid here. So tensile stress is the stress in which the force is applied to expand the solid, and in compressional stress the force is applied to compress the solid. So for example, let's say we have a spring and we apply a force like this which is expanding the spring, then it is tensile force. It will give tensile stress, and if we compress the spring, it will give us compressional stress. Now if the angle, like for example, this is this red one is the original shape. Okay, red one was the original solid. Now we applied a force like this. Okay, like this. So because of that, this let's say the base is fixed, so the solid may get tilted like this. Okay, it will get tilted like this. So this tilt gives us the tangential stress. Why tangential? Because there is some angle which is obtained. So what will be the value of that tangential stress? It can be found out by tan theta. Okay, the angle. So this are different situation in which the stress is there. If we expand, tensile; if we compress, compressional; if we change the angle, then tangential. And in any fluid, the hydrostatic force, hydrostatic stress is there when we have a fluid, because when you put any solid in any fluid, then the fluid try to apply force from every direction, in which gives us the hydrostatic stress. Now let's try to understand the second term, which is strain. So when we apply some external force, so obviously there can be some change in the shape of the object. So what is strain? Strain is the change in dimension upon the original dimension. So change in the shape upon the original shape of the object. So there are three types of strain: longitudinal, volume and shearing. So longitudinal is quite simple when we are discussing about only the change in the length. So longitudinal strain is the change in the length upon the original length. Volume strain is the change in the volume upon the original volume, and shearing strain is the strain which is related to the tangential stress, that is tan theta tan phi. So it is about change in the angle upon the original angle, you can say that. It tells us about the amount of tilt. So stress and strain are the two important terms. Stress tells us about the restoring force per unit area, and strain tells us about the change in the dimension upon the original dimension. So now this strain and stress has some relationship. So stress is proportional to strain, directly proportional to strain, and it is quite logical also, because when you apply more when there is more stress, when there is more external force, then the change in the dimension will be more, the strain will be more. So strain and stress are directly proportional to each other. So when the proportionality constant is removed and equal to is provided, then there is one constant, and that constant is termed as the modulus of elasticity. So this is E, which is the modulus of elasticity. So E is equal to stress upon strain. It is the modulus of elasticity. So modulus of elasticity is a constant which tells us about how easily the shape of the solid will be changed, or how difficult will it be. Okay. Now this formula, stress equal to modulus of elasticity into strain, is called the Hooke's law. So whatever materials follow the Hooke's law are considered to be elastic materials. So Hooke's law is stress is proportional to strain. It was given by Robert Hooke. Now, so again, as we have different types of stress, we have different types of strains, we will have different types of modulus of elasticity as well. So the modulus of elasticity are of three types mainly: Young's modulus, bulk modulus, and modulus of rigidity. So Young's modulus is the normal, usual modulus. Again, remember, modulus is stress upon strain. So Young's modulus is normal stress. Normal means tangential or compressional, tensile or compressional. Normal stress upon longitudinal strain, that is in which we are discussing about the length only. Bulk modulus is the again normal stress, like tensile or compressional stress upon volume. Here we are discussing about the three-dimensional change in the shape. And modulus of rigidity is the ratio of tangential stress and the shearing strain, that is the third stress and third strain, tangential stress and the shearing strain. So these are the three different types of modulus of elasticity based on the three different stress and strain that we have discussed. So it's simple. Normal stress is force upon area, longitudinal strain is change in the length upon original length. So we will get this. So the Young's modulus is represented by capital Y. Similarly, the bulk modulus is represented by K, and its value is F by A, again normal stress, upon the volume strain, which is del V by V. Now minus sign indicates that if we compress it, the volume will decrease. Therefore we have minus sign. So ultimately we get this. And now we can also write this force upon area. Force upon area is normal pressure. Okay, so that's why we have this pressure instead of force upon area. So when we increase the stress, there is a decrease in volume, because of that there is this minus sign. And modulus of rigidity, tangential stress upon shearing strain. Again, tangential stress is force upon area and shearing strain is represented by phi, and this phi is approximately equal to area into the length. This phi is approximately equal to area into length, or sorry, you can say that it is equal to the change in length upon original length, or the shift in length. Okay, this shift in length with respect to the this length L. So this is the modulus of rigidity. Now there is one concept of compressibility. The compressibility is the inverse of bulk modulus. It is represented by beta and it is 1 by K. So compressibility tells us about how much we can how easily we can compress the solid. So stress, strain and modulus of elasticity, these three terms are very important. They tell us about how much the solid can change the shape of itself, or how easily can we change the shape of the solid. Now there are few relationships between all these things. So this ratio between this again is a very important formula. This is the Poisson ratio. What is it? Poisson ratio. Okay, Poisson ratio. So Poisson ratio is represented by sigma equal to lateral strain upon longitudinal strain. So what does this say is that, let's say we have a wire. Now when we let's say we are applying a force which expands the wire, so what will happen? Not only the length will change, but also the thickness of the wire will change, area. So uh, this Poisson ratio is telling us about that for how much length that we change, the cross sectional area change or the thickness of the wire change. So that is the Poisson ratio, and lateral strain upon longitudinal strain is beta upon alpha. So what we have discussed so far can be summarized. These are the few relationship between different types of modulus and different Poisson ratio and everything. So just remember this formula. This will be very helpful for you in solving a few questions. So now the stress and strain are as we have understood them. So now we can understand the concept of potential energy and the strain energy. So whenever the dimension of the solid change, the distance between the atoms also change, molecules also change, and because of that the potential energy or the strain energy is there. So the work done in changing the dimension of object gets stored in the form of potential energy. When we change the shape or dimension of the object, then it is stored in the form of potential energy. And if the object is elastic, then this potential energy helps the object in gaining its original shape. So these are few formulas which will be helpful. So potential energy is equal to U is equal to half stress into strain into volume. There is another formula, half into Young's modulus into strain square into volume. Now if you want to find the potential energy per unit volume, then you can find it by this formula. Just divide the above formula by volume and you will get half into stress into strain, or half into Young's modulus into strain square, or half into stress square upon Young's modulus. So this formula tells us about the potential energy. So this, whenever we do the work done to change the dimension, that energy is stored in the form of potential energy. So let's discuss about the stress strain curve, which is one of the most important concept to understand. So if you understand this concept, you will be able to understand why few objects are elastic, why few are plastic, and so on. So what are elastic material? First of all, what is elastic solid? What is elastic material? So any solid, any material which comes back to its original shape after deformation is called elastic material. Now it is important that elasticity is not about a material which can have which we can easily change the shape and then it can come back to its original shape. It is about the material whose shape is very difficult to change. That material is more elastic. For example, steel is more elastic than rubber. Why? Because it is very difficult to change the shape of steel, and once we if we change the shape of the steel, it will again come back to its original shape. Not that easily, but it will. So rubber is less elastic because rubber is very easy to it is very easy to change the shape of the rubber. Okay, rubber band. So elasticity is about the material which can withstand the most force, and it is very difficult to change its shape, and if we change the shape, then it will come back to its original shape. That is called elasticity. But one more thing is there, elastic materials are the materials. So once let's say this on this curve we have the relation between stress and strain. So this region 0 to or O to A, this region is the elastic region. If the material is showing something like this, then it is a elastic material. So if stress is directly proportional to strain, that is we have a linear line, then the material is called the elastic material. Okay, that is it's following the Hooke's law. It is following the Hooke's law. Stress is directly proportional to strain. So each material has some limits. Okay, if you apply some more force, then everything eventually will break down. Okay, so in this curve we are trying to understand what are different types of limits. So first let's say 0 O to A, the material is elastic, that is it is following the Hooke's law, and it will come back to its original shape once the force is removed. Now let's say we are going from A to B. So A to B is a region in which again the object will come back to its original shape, but here the relation between stress and strain is not linear. Okay, they are not following the Hooke's law. So the elastic material becomes elastomer when we go in this region. That is when we apply a little more stress. Then if you apply even more stress, then for a few moments nothing will happen. It will stay in its original shape and it will not come back to its original shape, and ultimately at in this during this region it will become a plastic material, that whatever you make the shape of the solid, it will remain in that shape. Okay, it will become plastic. And if you apply some more force, then ultimately at, let's say at point D, the object, the solid will break. Okay, if we have more stress, more force on the object, then ultimately it will break down, it will become brittle. So any material can have all these properties, but it's about the force that we are applying. So in a particular region, if the force is less, the material can be elastic. If force is increased, then it will become elastomer. Even after that, if the force is increased, it will become plastic, and after that it will become brittle, that is, it will break after a point. So the D point is called the breaking point, B point is called the yield point. After yield point, the material will not be coming back to its original shape. And OA is called the elastic range, because in this range it is following the Hooke's law. So this stress and strain curve is very important in order to understand the different natures: elastic, elastomer, plastic and brittle nature.